is real. Listen.
In this episode of Curious Explorers, we take a deep dive into the topic of angel, demon, spirit guide. Can you tell the difference? And if we can't, what does that mean? And we'll also give you a really quick sneak preview of our upcoming interview with director Marty Stocker. In that upcoming interview, he'll talk about his 6-year journey to making a film about controversial modern-day exorcist Father Malachi Martin. So if any of this intrigues you, if you're curious, stay tuned. Hey, Kath.
Hey, Trace.
How's it going?
It's going well. We got about another 10 degrees of warmth today, so we're moving in the right direction.
I'm so happy. I was just like, totally, it was too much. With the single digit weather thing, too much.
You know, I've never been I love the winter. Like I'm a dark and stormy person. I love when it's cold. I love the snow. I love when it gets dark early. And even I was like, that's enough. Like it was, that's
I'm all done.
plenty. I'm all set. Thank you so much.
I know. Well, only a few more months of cold, right?
Well, it depends, right? I mean, next week we'll know.
Yeah.
Whatever
that's right. Groundhog
whatever
Day's
the
coming up.
groundhog says. That's actually my father's birthday too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it was canceled this year again.
It was canceled in one place, but
Okay.
but Puxatawny did not. I don't think
No.
Puxatawny has ever canceled it.
Okay.
The New Jersey place canceled it, but you can't cancel Groundhog Day.
I don't
There's
know
gonna
how
be a
people
groundhog
cancel it.
somewhere.
I know.
It's like when they
they're
tried to
plentiful.
cancel. It's like when they tried to cancel Halloween. It's like Halloween doesn't happen because you permit it to.
I know. That's a whole
Halloween
other topic.
happens. Yeah, it happens.
Whole other topic.
Yeah.
So we have a few topics for today. The first thing I wanted to do is really quickly update you on a recent episode we recorded that we're still, putting the finishing touches on, and that'll be out soon. And that's our interview with Marty Stocker,
That is great.
the legendary director of Hostage to the Devil, the documentary about none other than exorcist and controversial figure, Father Malachi Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a great time speaking with him, just letting our listeners know to stay tuned for it because he has such incredible stories. This was a
great
6-year endeavor in the making. And then Netflix picked it up, which is huge.
So go watch it on Netflix. Like in fact,
watch the actual documentary.
Go watch
please.
the documentary now.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not now. Listen to this podcast and then
right
immediately following that, after you comment and review us and give us 5 stars.
Yes.
Go immediately to Netflix and watch it because it really is a great documentary.
So I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but if you Google, you will find the documentary.
Yeah, you'll find it.
100%. And Marty Stocker, I'm going to give him a shout out ahead of time, has launched Hostage to the Devil, the podcast.
Yeah,
so a lot of the interviews are uncut and it's fascinating. I've been listening to it while I cook like breakfast, as one does.
Well, what's so funny is, you're afraid of all of this stuff and you can't keep yourself from listening to it,
I'm not afraid of reading about it so much, but I wouldn't want to experience it, I don't think. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll become a hardcore demonologist someday.
Yeah, I would say the demonic stuff, even I don't want to experience. You know what I mean? Like there's so much stuff that I experience that I don't take as being negative just because, if it scares me, it doesn't necessarily mean it's negative. But demonic by definition is hateful. By definition, it seems like maybe it's not a good idea. I'm just going to say, I'm just going to put it out
I'm going
there.
to go with that.
That's
uncontroversial. What am I saying? Making up words.
That's okay. That's what we do now. As the kids say, it's a little sus and it's cringe. That's all. I'm just saying.
It is.
Demons are cringe. That's it.
At the best. And I wanted to just let you,
the best demons are,
and other people know that one of the things Marty will talk about is what he refers to as resistance. So resistance by some supernatural force, presumably not a great one, to his talking about Malachi Martin and the exorcisms. And he's had all kinds of phenomena happen to him. And he experienced some while we were recording. So we have a few, not mind blowing, but visual anomalies that I'll make sure to replay
Yeah.
so people can catch them on the
Yeah,
YouTube version.
I looked at the one that you guys sent today, and I actually think that's really interesting.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think it's really interesting because it really it is not the orb phenomena that can be casually dismissed by someone like me, who casually and constantly dismisses, or because it's not the
Diss and
floating.
dismiss.
Well, it's not the floating kind of,
It's
you
not
know.
lint.
Yeah, you like, it could be moisture. It's much more of a light anomaly
Yeah.
than most of the stuff that people call
Yeah.
orbs.
And I mean, he was talking about other things he experienced too, so I won't do any spoilers today, but it's worth, even if you just listen to the audio versions, you'll still enjoy the interview because he's got great stories about
Yeah,
his work and the documentary and some of the weird stuff. But if you get a chance to watch the YouTube version, that's where you'll catch the visual anomalies. And there
yeah,
are a
he was
few
a
of them.
really interesting guy because you started to realize that this work of his became a focal point of his life and really changed the direction of his life.
For
You know,
6 years.
yeah, no, even
And
now,
for now,
I
yeah.
mean, it clearly, he talks about how he came to a crossroads and kind of changed
100%.
his life. It was, he's an interesting and articulate guy.
Absolutely. So I want to go over two things with you and our listeners tonight. One is going to be literally just paranormal news, and the other one is going to be going down a little bit of a rabbit hole about
Us?
another guy.
Wait, a rabbit hole?
Oh
Us?
my God, this one I think is a really interesting one, and it's timely. So I'm going
Great.
to mouse on over to my notes.
Wait, do you want me to be a dun 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 dun? No, I don't want you to do that.
So my news item, paranormal news tonight, is from a New York Times article, and I don't people can love or not love the New York Times, just stay with the story. It's a New York
Focus,
Times
people.
article from January 10th, 2025, so recently. And I think the headline is something to the effect of "The Ouija board led to marriage." So some of you may have seen this, some of you may not have, but I'm going to read some of the article and summarize it basically. But this woman, Laura Marie Acker, was visiting her mother in Lewes, Delaware in June of 2023, not that long ago, when she joined a group of her mother's friends for a Ouija board night, as one does. During the session, Laura said, "My father came through via letters and numbers with a surprising message." And the message was, I would be engaged in 2024. So remember, this is June 2023. So the spirits don't have that long to get going on this very important relationship development. So later on, I guess, when Laura tried the Ouija 5 months later, she said another message from her father, who had died in 2016, advised her to keep going to church. That's an unexpected message to come through the Ouija board. Most of the Ouija board messages I've heard usually have a dark and sinister tone to them, but this was pretty upbeat. It's very wholesome. Keep going to church, Laura. And she said, I thought the whole thing was crazy. So anyway, by the end of 2023, now she is saying that, a little time has passed. She's still experiencing what she calls an unsatisfactory dating life. So many people do. And after years of living in Miami and New York before moving to Charleston, South Carolina in 2020, I guess she was kind of like, come on, Dad, when is this going to work out? Step it up,
Yeah.
Dad and Ouija board. So she said, I didn't hold out much hope because I've always dated men with no interest in marriage or family. I think that's a lot of people. She said, my
Also,
career was
that
a
could be a
priority.
clue as to why you're not getting married.
Yeah, maybe those aren't the people to date. So she said things changed for her in April when at age 39, I love how they introduced that into the article because it's like, so what? That's very telling. When Laura, at age 39, met Evan Alexander Mencher, 41, through a friend from her Bible study group in Charleston. So he wasn't at the Bible study. They don't have the same religious background. So he wasn't there. But this person introduced them, and she said, when I saw Evan sitting on a bar stool, because they met at a bar, as one does, very often, he took my breath away, she said. And that actually sounds very romantic.
It does. It's sweet.
Yeah. And so he said that she was 20 minutes late. Interesting how what stands out for him was a little different, but she was 20 minutes late and wearing a bright yellow dress with her hair pulled back. And he said, I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I was taken aback as we locked eyes. So I guess the lateness he was able to kind of excuse. And the rest is history. They got married. So
he also had an extra drink.
Yeah. Well, that might have made it easier to converse with somebody you don't know yet.
Yeah.
But how wonderful. That's like a happy Ouija story.
Right.
Right. Who doesn't want that? Instead of
is there
terrifying ones.
Is there a meanwhile or that's it? That's the full story of it.
I mean, it seems like it's the full story. I don't know what else her dad is up to. Maybe he's able to rest in peace now that, she's happily married and settled. What a lovely story. So my next story, however, is not going to have the same flavor because, I can't sustain that, unmitigated positivity and sunshine for too long. So this one, some of the listeners will have already become familiar with this, but if not after this podcast, you'll have to. So this is the case of Don Phillips and Becky. Now, it doesn't sound ominous yet, but just wait. So, I'm not a big TV watcher, as you know, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing the rest of my time. I might be just like editing our episodes. I don't know. It seems to take a lot of time, but I turned on Netflix, which I pay for anyway, and I found Unsolved Mysteries, season 5, episode 2, because I was kind of scrolling because I checked out something else you wanted me to check out, which we won't talk about just yet. And it turns out this guy, Don, is featured in one episode. I think he's going to actually become maybe not a household name, but much more well-known to the general public, or at least the Unsolved Mysteries watching public. So,
which is the general public.
Yeah, I don't. It's a subset. So this is how it all started. In August 2011, Don Phillips, the paranormal investigator that he was already, went to investigate what he describes as a particularly malevolent haunting at the home of a woman named Gaynor Isid in the UK. And this was like a horrific haunting. Whatever was there was like lighting fire to her kitchen curtains and throwing stuff around. Her family was absolutely terrified. I would say they were in danger. I don't think that's a big leap with the fires and stuff flying around. So Dawn goes, I don't even remember how she got a hold of him, but when he's there, he hears a female voice communicating with him. And she refers to herself as Becky, and she agreed to help him quiet the malevolent spirit. It's not fully gone, but Gaynor Isid, the woman whose house it was, said that it's calm enough and they can make peace and live with it. Also, another kind of interesting side story, but we won't get into that. But this woman, Becky, just somehow she dealt with the spirit and it agreed somehow to calm down, which is a little bit strange for a variety of reasons that will become clear. And also strange is that Don invited Becky to come with him to help him. Now, you and I know, anybody who thinks it's a good idea to invite spirits to come with you, please look at our short on our YouTube channel about the Tesla Ghost Challenge. Because if you invite spirits to come with you, I think they do.
Well, they're people.
I think they're people with poor boundaries sometimes.
Like people.
Like people. Some don't have good boundaries. So it gets more interesting. So Becky's voice has been captured on numerous voice recorders. So now when Don investigates, he brings like maybe 4 of them, several with him, and he'll ask Becky a question. He hears her in his mind anyway. He doesn't need the recorders to hear her, but she replies, and you can hear it on the recorders right away. So even I'm an open-minded skeptic, believe it or not, even though I look like I'm just like, yes to everything. But I was watching this documentary and I was like, holy cow, there's something going on here. And I have thoughts about it, what it might be. She is able to discern future events very clearly and accurately and let him know about it. She advises him on just about all things in his daily life. He's said that she has never been wrong. I don't know whether this would have happened for Don anyway. It's not exactly clear, but he has become extremely telekinetic. Now, I've met people who are telekinetic. They can very easily, hold a spoon or a fork and it becomes twisted. And I've seen this in real time and it's mind-blowing. I have seen Sean McNamara with his telekinetic ability moving, tinfoil on a needle in a closed kind of glass cloche. And other things that were more impressive. What he can do is mind-blowing. From several feet away, he made a paranormal investigator's dowsing rods move. Wherever he moved his hands, they move. He's clearly able to channel a lot of energy. He's become much more psychic on his own. But, I'm going to tell you why this seems like a case of possession rather than a helpful spirit guide as we get on. But in 2015, Steve Mera, who's a well-respected British paranormal investigator, who's extremely skeptical, though, and he was really reluctant to meet him at first, Don reaches out to him and says, I've got to demonstrate for you what's going on. I've got this guide, Becky, who's literally with him every day, all day, which right there there's no human I would want to spend that much time with me. That might be another issue. But so this guy is like, no. And Don is so persistent that Steve Mera agrees to meet with him. He hears the voices on the recorders. He brings sealed envelopes with images in them where he did not know what was in the sealed envelopes. And on camera, Don can pick up any sealed envelope and tell you exactly what's in it because Becky tells him. So now Steve Mera, the skeptic, is wholeheartedly a believer. He's all in. He's testing him a lot. He's taking him on investigations. At one point, fast forwarding like a few years, all of a sudden, Don Phillips tells Steve Mera, you know what? Becky says she's ready to speak with you. She's ready to talk with you directly. And so he's like, okay, thinking it's going to be on a recorder. And what he said is this part isn't on camera, but his description is, I guess her voice was out loud, super clear, speaking with him. And he said he was so overwhelmed emotionally and physically that he like fell to his knees, but not in a good way. It took him like quite a while to recover. And he said it was awful or like terrifying. I might be misquoting that, but that he experienced an emotion he's never even had before. And it was unnerving. Now, at the same time, in his mind, Don Phillips is hearing what sounds to him like a beautiful angelic voice. And he is not affected like this. So I have thoughts. So in 2017, somehow they contact an Irish paranormal investigator, Barry Fitzgerald, who I guess you know of him.
Yeah. I mean, I actually do know Barry.
Ah, okay.
One-on-one, yeah.
All right, we have to get him on the show because I want to ask him about this.
I love him, not the most skeptical guy.
I mean, he seemed pretty skeptical initially with Don because, the claims are extraordinary.
Yeah, they remind me of a very specific case.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about when you're,
Yeah. Well, basically, somehow Don and Becky convinced Barry that this is real. And if you look at the episode, I'm not going to tell you about the whole episode, but he comes up with stuff there was no way he could come up with again and again, including encountering a djinn,
Mhm.
which we've talked about on another episode. So now in 2018, I'm fast forwarding a little, Don, Becky, and Steve Mera go to Bothell, Washington, outside of Seattle,
Mhm.
at the request of the homeowner, Keith Linder, who was reportedly experiencing very malevolent stuff, a really horrible haunting, complete with all kinds of objects flying, like scissors launching and sticking in the wall, motion detectors being set off when no one's there. These guys were there for a week and
Mhm.
got a ton of audio and video evidence. Um, Don heard the spirit saying, "I want more. I want more." And I think they have a recording of that. More of what I don't know. Anyway, the week-long investigation actually gets cut short because Keith Linder, the homeowner, moves out. He just can't take it anymore. It's not safe. I mean, it looks like the worst possible poltergeisty type of activity that I've ever
I
heard
mean,
of.
that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
But I mean, terrible. And I guess I forget who concluded that the house is built on a Native American burial ground. That like that's like such a trope. Maybe it's true. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's so dangerous because, and this is something we can talk about on another. But there's been a lot of scholarship done recently on, um, from a historical perspective on using that trope and where it comes from and where this idea originates and why would that inherently be a negative. I mean, it's, to me, it's a very dangerous kind of thing
Yeah.
to put forward just from a cultural appropriation standpoint, but
Yeah.
but
Although
I digress.
I have to say, I don't think any burial ground, any like cemetery where the bodies weren't moved, and we've known there are cases of that. It seems like a bad place to build a house.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also places where it's done nothing. You
Yeah,
know what I
I'm
mean?
sure.
I mean, I think, like, what I find interesting is that it's the place, like, that moving out would have affected any change in what this Keith fella, unless he really, unless one of two things. One, the place was what was haunted. And number two, his belief in the place, the place, that he powerfully believed leaving would, that it wouldn't follow him, especially when you're bringing somebody in who has a ghost that's following them. You know what I mean? It's
I
interesting.
Well, yes. Um, Absolutely. We could spend a lot of time unpacking that. I want to tell you a little bit
We're gonna
more.
we're gonna spend some time on that in the
I
future.
want to tell you a little more about
Yeah,
I
yeah,
said
it's
Dom,
fascinating. Yeah.
Don Phillips and Becky. Because,
So this, you said, was like 2018
yes,
that they're in Washington.
yes. And there is a news article, a local news article about it. And I did look that up. So I didn't just take what was in the
Right.
documentary. I definitely was doing some searching and found some other videos and some other news stories. But so at some point, there's so much, and I'm saying this as respectfully, really, with the intention to be respectful. But Don, if I had somebody literally becoming like my conjoined twin at this point, because she never leaves him
Right.
almost, I would want to know a little more about them. Um, Everybody's different, but she told him she was a woman in her 30s who was a teacher and had two kids and who died in the 1980s in either a plane or a train crash. But Don wasn't sure and I guess didn't follow up. I guess it wasn't important to him. And I guess Barry Fitzgerald, I believe, is the one who researched and found no evidence that there is.
Right.
They must have had more details to narrow the search. But one question is, if a spirit would lie to you or to be cagey and withhold details when she's clearly able to be so specific and so accurate about so many other things, why wouldn't you be specific about your details?
Do you know anything about Don's personal life? Was he married?
So that was my question. And they didn't even get into that in the documentary, but I looked on his channel. And so this is what I find interesting. He actually is married. And on one of his more recent videos on his channel, he says that his wife has been very sick for a year and he's concerned about her. And so he's been doing fewer videos as of late. And my first thought was, holy cow, he's married, because he talks about Becky like he is
in a relationship with her.
well, he believes he is in a relationship
Right.
of some sort, but like enamored beyond.
Right.
That's not even.
No, and also think about what his
That's
wife
not
has to, like you're sharing your life with this other personality, wherever this personality is coming from, who has a huge influence
Oh my
on,
God.
the person that you're
Married to.
that you have your most intimate relationship with.
And I don't think, I mean, it sounds like Becky and Don, if you're ever listening to this, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like his closest relationship, because there's such, I'm going to say, codependence. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's codependence, but
And Don, if you're
can't.
listening, please come on and talk to us about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
we'd
willing
love to
I'm
talk
willing to,
and bring
revise
Becky.
my. I don't know about that. He said that he doesn't want to lose her, and he said, this is a quote, I feel it would take half of me if she left.
Mhm.
So psychologically, if this were another human being, it would make me concerned, especially if he already was in a relationship.
Right.
So, I don't know if he has a relationship with any other living human being that's as close, my questions, and then we'll get into a little more, even if you can believe that. But why hasn't Don asked her for more specific information? I think he's afraid to offend her,
Mm-hmm.
or is so enamored he doesn't need it. Maybe he's afraid
Maybe he's afraid he'll unravel it if he does. Maybe he's afraid of poking a balloon. You know what I mean? Maybe there's something very, very, maybe he senses the fragility of whatever this is. I mean, do we have any evidence that this isn't a construct?
So that's an excellent question, because he has discerned so much extremely accurate information, which he attributes to Becky.
Right,
and
but
he's
he
developed.
attributes it to Becky.
Right.
What? How do we not? How do we know if we make the assumption that psychic phenomena exists and people are psychic, and you and I both, we both fall on one side of that, then who's to say it's not his psychic phenomena and he's created this personality that allows him to control it, or allows him to control the information, or assign it, to this personality.
I would say he's displacing the powers onto, like you said, this kind of fictional personality that feels real, the split off part of himself, except she reliably is audible. You know what I mean? Like, could he be a ventriloquist? Sure. I don't know. But, it's clearly a female voice.
There are two cases that come to mind when you say that.
Okay.
One is a real old school one that we 100% are going to cover, which is the Bell Witch, right? The Bell Witch case there was tons of auditory phenomena. People heard the voice. It wasn't something that was, I think even there is some evidence that, Andrew Jackson, before he was president, he investigated the Bell Witch phenomena. And,
Wow.
and many, many people heard the voice, right? And, it's 200 years ago, so I get it. But then there's also the exorcism of Emily Rose case, which is the name of the movie and not the actual phenomena that happened. But people would hear hear an external voice that was very different from hers. And there was some phenomena, some physical phenomena that they believed she was capable of doing. But I would argue that the human, we psychic phenomena is capable of being physical phenomena as well.
Absolutely.
So, that would be my only caveat. You know what I mean? That it's like, yeah, it's not, to me, it's not beyond the realm of certainly possibility that someone would be capable of creating, physical phenomena or auditory phenomena if they were that capable,
100%. I mean, and again, like, I've seen one other person that can move an object so forcefully when there was no other way to move it, and repeatedly, and that was in real time. But yeah, if he's telekinetic, could he create the sound of a woman's voice on a digital voice recorder, or 4 of them? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
What not Barry, sorry, what Steve Mera heard that, like, he said felt like it went through him, like, in not a good way. I don't know.
Did he describe the voice? Did it sound like a voice?
Oh, yeah. It was out loud and female and like nothing he'd ever experienced because he felt it, like, go through him.
I think that that's interesting because I think when you were saying that to me, I thought, well, one of the things that he probably experienced that was uncomfortable was, he probably didn't believe that he would hear it. Like, or even though he might have consciously believed that he didn't he didn't unconsciously believe it, or didn't, because I remember having experiences where I was like, yeah, I want to have that experience. I'm 100% able to, I'm 100% open to having that experience. And then had an experience and just been like, I didn't, I didn't expect to truly have that experience.
Yeah.
Or I didn't expect so the shock of it. I will say, full disclosure, I remember experiencing something on Gettysburg battlefield that changed my life, even though I went there with the intent of having that, then experiencing something, it just went right. And honestly, Eastern State Penitentiary as well.
No, I believe you. And, I think with all these things, it's like you never really know. And I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little out there, but even in a relationship with a human,
Yeah.
it's always a matter of, a certain degree of subjectivity, right?
Yeah,
Always.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Again, I watched some of these other.
Wait, can I ask another question? Sorry.
Yeah.
What the voice that's recorded, right? What you heard that voice.
Yeah.
And what did it sound like to you?
It sounded like a weird female spirit voice to me.
And who was, when they recorded it, who else was in the room? Like
Steve Mera and his crew.
But he didn't hear the voice at that time.
No one could hear it while it was being recorded, but in the moment they played it back, and you would hear it.
But did I'm sorry, what's his name? Daniel?
Don.
So
Don hears it
you and I
simultaneously in his head as a
Don
whisper.
Don can say, sitting in a room, and you say, how many people are in this room? Right? Or no, what's your favorite color? Right? Yeah. And Don hears her say purple, and it's also recorded.
Exactly.
Did Don say she just said it's purple, and then they listened to it?
I don't remember.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I'm just curious as to, I'm curious as to what level of testing. You know what I mean?
It didn't seem all that easy to fake. That's all I'm going to say. Just to tell you a little bit more. So, just some quotes from him, and then I want to tell you about my experience. He said, because I watched some of Don's other videos on his YouTube channel. He has, I think, more than one YouTube channel. And he is clearly extremely moved whenever he speaks about her. It's reverential. It's deferential. And he said, I live my life quite literally he said for, and then he corrected himself and said, by Becky. But it's interesting, for Becky. If she says do something, you know what? I do it. And he refers to this as a relationship. He said, I live my life by Becky. She's never been wrong. He buys flowers for her pretty regularly. And again, this is a man with a living, embodied wife. At some point, this is interesting. After having told him she was a woman who died in the 1980s when she was in her 30s, she had 2 children, she was a teacher. Now, then she tells him she wasn't actually a human spirit. This is years later, but an angelic being. So I have thoughts about that.
Mm-hmm.
Having had, I think, 2 angelic experiences, which sounds like BS unless you actually have it. But he said she is always available whenever he's called on her, always, until 1 week when she wasn't. And when he called for her, instead, a male spirit answered him and said his name was Edward. And when he asked who Edward was, Edward said, "I'm from the graveyard. And Becky asked me to work with you." So I'm sure you're having all kinds of thoughts and feelings about this whole kind of scenario here.
I'm just wondering what was going on that week.
Well, when she came back, because he was, I think, somewhat distraught that she was gone after he had her 24/7, at his, side for years. She came back after a week and said, "Did you miss me?" Like joking. Seems not angelic, but okay. And she said she had to go to heaven
Mm-hmm.
to take care of something, and then she was back. Now, she also told him, this is just an aside, that she rests when she can, and she can feel cold. So I'm now going to come back into the world of the Curious Explorers studio and somewhat weigh in on this again as a regular person, but also as a shrink, because and as somebody who's had transpersonal and paranormal experiences on and off since early childhood. Doesn't mean I'm the world's expert. It just means I have opinions like everybody else. So as a psychologist, spirit or living person, this kind of relationship would concern me because he is so dependent, and this is taking precedence over every other relationship. It sounds like maybe it isn't. But I don't think enmeshed is even an appropriate word. My second thing is, I don't believe an angelic being would lie to you ever about anything. And somebody who's able to access very specific information could be quite specific with you about who they are if they were human at one point. This to me would be very concerning. And if he didn't exhibit such clear precognizance and such clear telepathy and such clear, claircognizance, like this knowing without knowing how he knows it, and such accuracy and such telekinetic power, I would say this was, like you were suggesting, like, could this be a creation of his own psyche? And maybe it could be both, I don't know. But the fact that he now has special powers that he didn't before, maybe they were latent, I don't know. And she has lied to him, even if he thinks she had a good reason, and sent another spirit from the grave. None of that sounds kosher to me. I have to be honest. The other thing is, I don't know enough to know, but I would assume angelic beings can be in multiple places at once. A lot of people out there, a lot of stories of angelic encounters. I don't think you can only be in one place at a time. So it doesn't add up to me. It sounds to me like this is a case of possession, quite honestly, and that she has seduced it. This spirit, referring to itself as Becky, has seduced him over the course of years by telling him things that were true and amping up his own ability to manifest these powers.
Has there been a negative, has it had a negative impact on his life?
He's going to say no, and I can't make a connection. And again, I want to be very thoughtful that if I were done listening to this, I'd be outraged and offended that someone who doesn't know me would be asking this question. But
I know, but you're making an assertion. People have a right, and you should have an expectation that people are going to question that assertion.
He's a public figure at this point. He's been on TV. His work has been documented. He's had a few public.
And he's making an assertion. He's saying this is what
YouTube
this is.
Channels.
So
he's not. I'm not going into his private life that he hasn't already shared.
So I do have a question though. Like, when we use the word angelic, I mean, there are different interpretations of what that, what constitutes an angel. Are we talking about a Judeo-Christian? Are we talking about, are we are we talking about more some kind of just a positive manifestation or a positive, an entity of positive energy? I mean, because to me, these are words that carry an enormous amount of weight. And so you kind of have to parse them carefully. Like the word demon to me, it's not the same thing as negative. It's not the same thing as dark. It's not, demon is a very specific thing. And so to me, and it brings with it a hierarchy, and to me, so does angelic. You know what I mean? And I agree. I don't think an angelic being, at least not any kind of structured kind of belief system or anything. I can't imagine, it would be there 24/7 for 15 years and then be like, I just needed a break. So I sent this guy from the graveyard.
From the grave. Like, even the phrasing.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Some random and like, why would you need to? And these are all great.
But that's why I wonder what was going on in his life. Like, so we heard what was happening in Becky's life, but what was happening that week in his life?
So I can tell you what he said on his YouTube channel. And, I guess 4 months ago, he posted a video saying, I think basically saying why he had been a little bit less online. So his wife had been very ill for a year, and I don't know what's going on with that. I didn't, I only watched a few videos, and his parents both died in the previous year. And again, like that could have absolutely nothing to do with Becky, or it could have something to do with Becky.
Meaning what?
So,
meaning the manifestation of Becky, or that Becky caused some kind of illness?
So I know how it sounds, but if a spirit lies to you, and now you have, I don't know how old he is. I would say middle-aged, but
so I would say like at a time when you could expect someone's parent to pass away, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not saying that anybody could demonstrate that, but I'm just thinking, like, again, and people will see when we release the episode with Marty Stalker, but, people have weird stuff happen. People have manifestations of physical phenomena, and in Marty's case, it doesn't even sound terrible. But so this is something and I realize I'm going out on a on a limb here for people who don't want to think of me as doing this, like people who want to think of me just as a psychologist, which I understand. So, when I was watching these videos the other night, sometimes this happens when when you're with somebody, or when you are whether they're live and in front of you, or you're watching a video or something, like once in a while, like I will get physical sensations that tell me something about the person. And it can be what's going on in the person's body. It can be my reaction to them on some level, but I felt ill, and I didn't feel emotionally affected, but I felt like that awful headache and like weird kind of prickly stuff. And actually I got that. I've had that before. As a complete aside, I remember there's a lot that you can actually pick up on from people's videos or photos or whatever. And I'm not like the world's greatest at it, but like Pam Coronado, whom I've mentioned before, who's, worked with law enforcement and intelligence agencies and found missing people and worked to track down like serial killers and things like that for like decades.
Has a TV show about it too. The TV show
yeah,
is one of my
she was
favorites.
on Sensing Murder for years, and
Great show.
And interviewed on many other things, and you can see her work, and she's really good at that. So, you know, I've taken various classes with Pam over the years, and now I would say we have like a nice friendship. But one of her classes that I recommend everybody take, and I would definitely do it again, is like a little mini class. It's reading photos. But she also incorporates that into her psychic detective classes. And I want to tell you, like, as you get into that, the kind of trance-like state, you absolutely can pick up various things about somebody. I'm getting a little nervous as I'm saying that. You know, we're energetic beings, and you know, like everybody who does the remote viewing will say, like, there is pretty much nothing that's not knowable. You might not know it, but it's not that
but someone else
couldn't.
could. Yeah.
But also, you know, that time and space aren't really a barrier to knowing something.
Right.
And when I was watching the video of Don talking, what I'm seeing with my eyes is a person who seems like a very nice man, who's very earnest, who absolutely wants to help people and believes Becky is helping him help people. And it sounds like they have had results, good results. So I get why he's never felt like she hasn't been helpful. But I just started feeling like not entirely great. Like, I don't know if unsettled is the word, but
unnerved.
It felt like, you know, like the headache stuff and some of the kind of physical kind of pings that I get sometimes with stuff. Anyway, I realize how this sounds non-specific and maybe a little off to people who don't know what I'm talking about. It's hard to articulate. The other thing I want to say is I've had 2 encounters in my life that I thought were angelic. One was at a mediumship demonstration at the Paranormal Museum years ago. And you know the medium I'm talking about. I forget the guy's name. He had his TV show, a few TV shows. And, you know, I had mixed feelings about him as a medium. But as he's talking to people, you know, it sounds crazy, but after half an hour, like, even though he was coming through with very specific and impressive stuff, I kind of checked out because it wasn't for me. And before he started coming over to me, a few seconds before, I felt this thing I've never felt before or since. And it felt like this celestial type of love or presence, like almost like it had a music to it, but not. Like if music had a feeling. And he looks over and he starts walking back to me and he said, "This is coming from the angelic realm." And he starts telling me all this stuff, which was true, which was not something that could have been looked up on Facebook. Brought forward my grandmother and her sisters, but it was a feeling I cannot articulate. And I have never had that feeling before or since.
Right.
And the goodness, I can't even put into, I don't even have the language for it. And my point is, when Steve Mera heard her voice and fell to the ground and felt unnerved in kind of a horrific way for like a half hour after and never wanted to feel that again, to me, that doesn't sound lovely and angelic and light-filled and loving. That's just my take. Again, I'm not an expert. You know, I'm just a person who's curious, literally.
Right. And explores.
And exploring. So anyway, I'm curious about what people listening have, you know, to say about this. If you've seen the show on, I'll put a link to the show on Netflix, or I'll at least put the information about the episode and the season. What do people think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is it's going to be interpreted through people's experiences and beliefs as well. So it's interesting to see and maybe what other people picked up. You know what I mean? I think that's, you know, I think it's really, it is really interesting. And it's interesting because there's both, you know, there's mental phenomena, but there's physical phenomena as well, which always adds something to it because you're like, but I mean, we know that people are capable of doing remarkable things that in many cases we think are impossible, but they're not, right? So they're just extraordinarily rare. I think of stigmata, and I think of, and I'm not suggesting that if you believe in stigmata that you're wrong or foolish or any of
Or
those things,
right.
but it's
We don't know.
or right, but it is an example of a profound physical manifestation of belief, regardless of where that belief or what's causing it, right? So we know that these things do happen, and we know that, we know that we have not remotely tapped into the power and the ability of the human mind, and that's not the human brain.
Yeah.
We haven't tapped into that either, and so that's really interesting. And we also don't know how that kind of incredibly powerful, those two incredibly powerful things interact with other energies and other things that have, whether they be entities or, or personalities or anything like that. Ambient, transient, however you want to look at them. It is really interesting. Where's he located?
I am not exactly sure where he is now. He may have relocated to the United States. I'm not sure.
But he was originally from the UK.
Somewhere in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I highly encourage you and other people, our listeners, to check out the episode if you have Netflix, or have a friend who has Netflix and you can go over there. But
That's interesting. Yeah.
Let us know what you think. Leave us a message. Of course, please like this episode, share, follow us, leave us a comment. Let us know what you want to hear more of. And of course, until next time, stay curious.
Keep exploring.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
You've just listened to the Curious Explorers podcast with the Kathy Kelly and Traci Stein. If you enjoyed the episode, remember to like, share, follow, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And of course, until next time, stay curious.
The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real. Is it? The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real.